If we have Amy's heart, we can save Hannah. Agree to organ donation and push Amy down the stairs or hit her. If you need help, I will do it. In any case, give Amy's heart to Hannah. My husband asked me, make your own daughter almost die to offer her heart for my niece. Facing my husband's outrageous demand, I felt like I was going insane. David, my husband, and I have been married for about 5 years. Our daughter Amy was born 1 year after we got married. From the time I was pregnant, David seemed to have no interest in our unborn child. When I told him about my pregnancy, his response was an indifferent, "Oh, is that so?" Perhaps it was due to the hormonal imbalance caused by pregnancy, but I remember shouting at David, "Why aren't you happy?" And we ended up in a fight. I don't think David hates children. After all, when my sister Sarah gave birth to her daughter Hannah, David, who was my boyfriend at the time, was so moved that he held the newborn Hannah and cried. "Babies are so small," he said through his tears. The look in his eyes as he touched Hannah's soft cheek was full of love. And yet, for some reason, David seemed to dislike Amy, his own daughter, even before she was born. When we found out the gender and I told him, "It looks like it's a girl," all he said was, "Oh." When I asked him if he would attend the birth, he immediately replied, "No." Even if he didn't hate children, I thought that he might be afraid of becoming a father, and I tried to forcibly accept his terrible attitude. Then Amy was born safely. She was so lovely at the first sight, and her tiny hand grasping my finger was too adorable. But David had no interest in Amy. When Sarah came to see the baby with Hannah, who was 2 years older than Amy, David was only fond of Hannah. There was always this question. Why? Why wouldn't David ever hold Amy? Why did David always look annoyed when Amy came to him? When I confronted him with these questions, he always answered irritably, "I'm busy with work. I can't afford to spend time on the child." David had a strong ambition to rise, and he seemed to be eager to get promoted as soon as possible. He actively took on work, and there were days when he would be holed up in his room at home, writing business proposals. Perhaps work was the most important thing to David. Still, I had always wished for him to consider his family first. I might be selfish, but I had always wanted him to watch Amy grow up with me. Amy started going to kindergarten and playing with her friends, lively every day. I felt like I had been raising her all by myself, but I made some mom friends and my loneliness was somewhat relieved. When I consulted my mom friends about David, one of them, a straightforward and big sisterly woman, bluntly suggested, "Why don't you get divorced?" Raising a child should be a joint effort between husband and wife. Being busy at work is no excuse at all. And isn't Amy 4 years old? I'm surprised you've put up with this for so long. There are also kids who get hurt more when their parents get divorced as they grow older, so if you're going to make a decision, sooner is better. I might be sticking my nose in your business, but... What she said was very reasonable, and I'd been considering divorce myself. But I couldn't make up my mind, constantly worrying about whether I could raise Amy on my own, or whether it was okay to arbitrarily take away Amy's father from her, even though he was such a bad father. So her words were not unwelcome at all, but rather a relief, giving me a strong push in the back. I decided to discuss divorce with David. The night I made the decision, after Amy fell asleep, David came to me and asked me to give Amy's heart to our niece Hannah. David had researched organ donation, and it seemed possible for a child to receive a transplant with parental consent. I had only just found out from David, not Hannah's mother Sarah, that Hannah was suffering from a severe heart condition and could not live much longer. "We need to get Amy's heart to Hannah as soon as possible," David said, agitated. "I need a moment," I protested, my voice sounding more like a scream. "What's going on? I feel sorry for Hannah, but why does David know about this?" "Because Hannah is my child." I was so shocked, I couldn't speak. I felt sick. Despite David being right in front of me, leaning on the dining table and holding his head, I couldn't feel him close. "What do you mean?" I managed to ask, my voice shaking. David, unable to hide his irritation, started explaining his desperate situation. It seemed like David had a crush on Sarah, who was a year younger than me, for a long time. He had once proposed to her, but Sarah chose Kyle, the man she is now married to. Sarah had a reputation for being flirtatious, but it seemed she had restrained herself since meeting Kyle. However, she had apparently been secretly meeting with David quite often. David said Sarah chose Kyle, not him, because Kyle was a civil servant. David earned less than the average salaried worker. His salary would hardly increase unless he got promoted. David's strong ambition was to get promoted quickly and take Sarah away from Kyle. Sarah is raising Hannah as Kyle's child, but she promised that if I got promoted and started earning more, she will definitely leave Kyle and come live with me and Hannah. Then why did you marry me? By marrying you, I can stay close to Sarah and naturally have more opportunities to see Hannah. You married me for such a reason? I loved David, but he never really saw me. The fact made me miserable and frustrated. To my despair, David added fuel to the fire. Amy isn't my child, is she? Amy doesn't look like me at all. She must be the child of some unknown man. Hannah's life is far more important than Amy's. Amy's heart should be given to Hannah. I felt as if something inside me had snapped. I'm not sure whether it was my love for David or my patience that snapped. Anyway, the man in front of me looked like some horrible monster. I swear I haven't cheated. Don't lump me together with people like you. Amy is definitely our child, but you're right. Amy doesn't resemble you. She is not a ruthless, unreasonable person like you. She's very kind. David glared at me angrily, but I was no longer afraid. As a mother, I am determined to protect Amy at all costs. I thought it would be dangerous to stay in this house with Amy, so I decided to leave immediately. I woke Amy up, carrying only the bare essentials so as to not alert David, who had started working on the project report he needed for his promotion to be with Sarah. Amy, half asleep, asked, "What's going on?" I hugged her tightly and whispered, "Amy, we're saying goodbye to Dad. We're going to Grandpa and Grandma's house. You won't be able to see your kindergarten friends anymore, but can you bear with it?" My desperate voice must have conveyed something to Amy. She nodded in agreement, her voice filled with tension. Holding Amy, I quietly left the house and ran towards the station. I considered taking the car, but thought it would be troublesome if David asked for it back. Once we got to the train, Amy, tired, fell asleep, but we managed to reach the vicinity of my parents' home close to the last train time. I ignored the numerous calls and messages from David, who must have noticed our absence and pressed the intercom at my parents' house. My parents, still awake, were surprised. What happened? But I asked to put Amy to bed first. After laying Amy to sleep on the second floor, I explained the situation to my parents. I confessed my intention to break up with David. They were shocked by David's cruelty and despaired to know that Sarah was raising her child with David as Kyle's child. No parent would be happy knowing their child is engaged in cuckolding. Knowing that Amy's life was in danger, they allowed Amy and me to live in their home. The next day, unable to sleep, we greeted the morning. Amy seemed to not fully grasp the situation, but she was extremely happy to see her grandparents. As I watched my parents lovingly observing Amy, I remembered the words a friend had told me. "You should divorce him as soon as possible," she had said. And I think she was right. It was possible that David had been planning to harm Amy without even consulting me. The thought sent chills down my spine. I ignored all of David's messages and texted him, "I will be seeking a divorce through lawyers. You are never to see Amy again." Shortly afterwards, I received a phone call from David's parents. "What is going on? David just contacted us abruptly saying that you two are divorcing. Is it true that your affair is the cause and Amy isn't related by blood to David?" In order to counteract David's attempts to get his parents on his side and reclaim Amy, I disclosed everything to his parents. Their disbelief was evident, so I invited them to my parents' house that day since my parents had said they would invite Sarah and Kyle over that evening to discuss things. David's parents lived relatively nearby. They agreed to come over. That evening, while my mother took care of Amy, I was in the living room with Sarah, Kyle, my father, and David's parents. It seemed that Hannah was still hospitalized. Sarah looked uncomfortable, while Kyle wore an angry expression. I had previously told Kyle over the phone about the events that had occurred the previous day and what David had said. He was probably unable to hide his anger towards Sarah. So Hannah really isn't my daughter, is she? It's true that David was planning to take Amy's heart to save Hannah, isn't it? Sarah, who had been biting her lip, burst into tears under Kyle's questioning. Yes, but Sarah's ugliness as she yelled was beyond description. Although there were my father and I, Sarah started talking like a tragic heroine. I wanted to help Hannah. That's why I asked David for Amy's heart. As a mother, it's natural, isn't it? How can you not understand the feeling of wanting to protect your own child? Is it because Kyle and Hannah aren't connected by blood you can't understand? Despite exposing her own infidelity, Sarah was crying like a victim, and Kyle sighed deeply. His clenched fist was shaking, and I was worried that he might hit Sarah at any moment, but Kyle seemed to be making an effort to speak rationally. I've always believed and raised Hannah as my true daughter. I was confused when I was told that Hannah is Sarah and David's child, but my feelings of caring for Hannah haven't changed. If I could cure Hannah's disease, I'd do anything. Then taking Amy's heart is no big deal. To go as far as taking the life of your niece to save Hannah, you and David are abnormal. Sarah, who was yelled at by Kyle, started crying loudly. I am so sorry. It was heartbreaking to see my father apologize deeply to Kyle. David's parents, who were listening in disbelief until now, also deeply apologized to Kyle and me alongside my father. Our foolish son, we are truly sorry. My father-in-law's voice was trembling as he apologized, and I could feel the enormity of the crime Sarah and David committed. Since the meeting was held to confirm the facts, once Sarah admitted her affair, the purpose of the meeting was achieved. As Kyle said, "I'll divorce Sarah," and stood up, Sarah shouted, "Wait, how am I supposed to live now? Who's going to pay for Hannah's treatment?" Almost at the same time as the sound of a car entering the garage. David wasn't invited to this meeting. I thought it would be scary if something happened to Amy. But David must have known that the only place I could go was my parents' house. David, who intruded into our house, seemed to realize that all of his wrongdoings had been revealed when he saw his parents apologizing to me and Kyle, and Sarah clinging to Kyle and crying. His face, which was red with anger, turned pale instantly, and even in that situation, he asked, "Where's Amy?" So I stood up and slapped his cheek. "Hannah is innocent. I feel sorry for her because she got sick, but I will never forgive you for trying to harm Amy." David, who was holding his slapped cheek, seemed to be surprised by my anger. I thought I was a quiet person. I didn't know such emotions were sleeping inside me. In the heat of my rising anger, I lunged at David. "You're the only one who's cuckolded. Amy is undoubtedly our child. You and Sarah are the ones who are messed up for doing the lowest things as humans. Don't think everyone's as messed up as you." Thanks to my father telling me to stop in the face of my raging self, I was able to regain some composure. David, who had been yelled at by me, looked at Sarah with a bewildered expression. Sarah, who had been clinging to Kyle's waist, was shaken off by Kyle. "David, I'm divorcing Sarah. If you want to marry her, go ahead. But I won't ever give you Hannah. I won't hand her over to fiends like you." Kyle's harsh, low voice, as if uttering a curse, seemed to freeze both Sarah and David in fear. Subsequently, Sarah and David were driven out of their homes and were disowned by their parents. Through the lawyers, Kyle divorced Sarah and successfully won custody of Hannah. Apparently, Sarah was often out, and most of the caregiving was done by Kyle, who took a long leave from work. I also divorced David through a lawyer. David sent a spiteful text saying, "Now I can marry Sarah." But Sarah and David didn't get married. Their parents severed ties with Sarah, but afterwards, Sarah had a mental breakdown and had to be hospitalized. Even though Sarah had been unfaithful, it seemed she cared about Hannah. Not being able to see Hannah broke Sarah's spirit. Kyle scoffed at her, saying she used to complain about how troublesome taking care of her was, though, and I felt the same way. Amy and I are living peacefully at my parents' home. At her new daycare, Amy seems to have made new friends, and she's growing up healthy and lively. I still keep in touch with Kyle. According to him, Hannah is due to have a heart transplant operation. When Amy and I went to visit Hannah, she gave us a cute smile and said to Amy, "Once the surgery is over, let's play a lot together." Both Kyle and I have been through tough times, but we've now resolved to raise our children responsibly as parents. As two single parents, we promised to support each other. I smiled, imagining the future of Hannah playing with Amy.
My name is Jacob. I'm probably the most nervous I've ever been in my life right now. That's because today is the day I'm going to Sarah's house to formally ask her for her hand in marriage. Sarah and I were classmates back in middle school, and we started dating after we reconnected at a school reunion about 6 months ago. We're both over 30 now, and naturally, we've been talking a lot about our future. Sarah often brought up marriage. While Sarah did put a bit of pressure on me, I was also considering settling down, and so we decided to get married. Because of that, I regret not being able to propose to her properly. We decided to get married before we really planned anything, and it was only a few days ago that we decided I would go to her house to formally ask for her hand. I've never met Sarah's parents since we started dating, but I once caught a glimpse of her father. It was either at a parent-teacher conference or at a school fair during our middle school years. I remember him talking about education with our homeroom teacher. While he seemed a bit intimidating at the time, I was impressed by how passionate a father could be about his child's education. That's probably because I lost my own father when I was in elementary school, and he was a man who didn't interfere much and let me do what I wanted to do. So the memory of Sarah's father talking with the teacher was particularly vivid. He must be a very serious person. So what will he think when he finds out we decided to get married on a whim and that I didn't propose properly? He might even say that our relationship of only 6 months is too short. The more I think about it, the more anxious I become, and I didn't sleep well last night. As I struggled to eat my breakfast, my mom looked at me with concern. I told her I was going to introduce her to my girlfriend soon. I haven't told her yet that it's Sarah, as I wanted to surprise her. My parents were also middle school classmates, so I think she will be happy to find out that my future wife is also a classmate. After my father passed away, our family struggled financially, and I had to start working right after graduating from middle school. I owe it to my mom that I managed to stay on the right path. She's always been upbeat, never talks bad about others, and is very positive. Because of her, I've always been able to live with hope. My mom rarely asks about my love life or whether I have a girlfriend. We live together, and she knows I'm busy, so I think she's just being considerate. I want to reassure her. That's why I absolutely have to make today's meeting a success. I feel like I'm about to get an ulcer. But seeing me so nervous, my mom patted me on the back and said with a smile, "Go and nail it, son." That's right. There's no point in being weak. I need to pull myself together. With that in mind, I headed to Sarah's house. When I arrived, Sarah opened the door and welcomed me inside. "My parents are waiting," she said, and a wave of anxiety hit me. When I entered the living room, Sarah's parents were sitting on the couch, and they smiled at me. "Thanks for coming. We've been waiting," they said with a smile, and I felt relieved. It's not scary at all. They seem very welcoming, and I think this could go well. After introducing myself, Sarah's mom served some tea. "Thank you," I said. "Turns out you were in middle school with Sarah? I had no idea. Were you ever in the same class as Sarah?" she asked. I told her that we'd never been in the same class, but Sarah had spoken to me at the school reunion. "Oh, I see. But I should remember you if you were a top student, even from another class," she mused, resting a hand on her cheek, looking puzzled. Before I could reply, Sarah chimed in with a chuckle. "Jacob wasn't exactly a star student, was he? Always around average, right?" I wish she hadn't been so blunt, but it was too late. I glanced over and saw Sarah's mom looking at me with an indescribable expression. Sarah's comment had changed the tone in the room. What was once a pleasant atmosphere had now become heavy and silent. After a moment of awkward silence, Sarah's dad broke it. "What college did you attend?" "I never went to college. In fact, I hadn't even finished high school. Well, actually, I started working right after middle school. I was planning to be honest about my past when a cup of tea came flying at me before I could finish my sentence. At the same time, a shout echoed, 'Don't mess with me! I let you into my home because Sarah told me you were a CEO. What's this? You've been working since middle school? So you're a dropout? A company run by someone like you can't be reliable. With the startup boom, you're just riding the wave, and you'll fail soon. That's certain.' Sarah's dad glared at me, flabbergasted. He grabbed my collar and bellowed, 'What's your motive? Trying to cash in because I'm an executive at a major corporation?' I desperately tried to deny it, but he wasn't listening. 'I can't trust a word from a high school dropout. This isn't a place for the uneducated. Get out,' he said, tossing me aside and throwing a teacup at me. After that, I couldn't even explain the misunderstanding, let alone calm him down. He kicked me, and I fell to the ground. Sarah and her mom just watched. As I lay there, disappointed they hadn't helped me, everything went black. He had flipped the dining table at me. I tried to dodge, but the table hit my foot. Overwhelmed by the intense pain, I let out a muffled groan. Sarah's dad scoffed, 'You're overreacting. It couldn't hurt that much.' Sarah's mom added, 'You're quite fragile for a man.' Even Sarah chimed in, 'This is so pathetic.' I knew I had to leave. Despite the lingering pain in my foot, I somehow managed to leave Sarah's house. When I got home, my mom, who had been eagerly waiting for me, rushed out to greet me. The moment I saw her, I passed out from relief. 'Jacob! Thank God you're awake!' When I opened my eyes, my mom's worried face was hovering over me. Her eyes were filled with tears. As I regained consciousness, I remembered what happened at Sarah's house. I was supposed to make her happy, but instead, I made her worry and sad. 'I'm sorry, Mom. I don't think I can introduce you to my girlfriend after all,' I admitted. When I told her this, my mom said, 'Don't worry about it, Jacob. I'm just relieved you woke up. I was really surprised when you collapsed in front of me.' Apparently, due to the shock, I had slept for a full day. According to what my mom heard from the doctor, it seems that the bone in my toe is broken. I can be discharged from the hospital soon, but it seems like it'll take about a month to heal. They also said they found bruises all over your body. I won't force you to talk, but if you can, could you tell me what happened?' Prompted by my mom, I explained the events of the day. The moment I mentioned the surname of Sarah, Mom's face changed color. 'Johnson? You don't mean—' It appears that when I was in junior high school, my mom was criticized by Sarah's dad, who said having a child of a single parent around is a bad influence on my daughter. My father was no longer around when I was in junior high. My mom was busy with work every day and was only able to come to school events once during the 3 years. She was told such a thing by Sarah's dad on that single occasion. Mom must have been deeply hurt. I didn't know anything about it because my mom never said anything about it and didn't show it in her behavior at all. But now, my mom is making a very frustrated face, saying, 'I can't believe that the person who said such a thing hurt my son.' The moment I saw that expression on my mom's face, my anger reached its boiling point. It's not just that he looked down on me for being a junior high school graduate, but he also oppressed my mom in the past. I made a determination to get back at them, father and daughter. The next day, I headed for Sarah's house again. I contacted her in advance, but Sarah didn't seem to feel guilty about what happened, and rather blamed me for the lack of communication during the full day I was unconscious. So, she was like that. I felt pathetic thinking that the person I decided to marry was like that, but I also thought it was a good thing that I got to know before getting married. When I arrived at Sarah's house, both her father and mother were waiting outside. "Daring to come back here? Don't you dare step foot in this house again." Sarah's father was already on the offensive. He didn't mention at all that I was on crutches with a cast on my left foot. "I have no intention of stepping in again. I've decided to file a complaint, so I came to report it today," I said. At my words, The two looked at each other and started laughing. Wait, are you serious about the complaint? You weren't seriously injured. It's absurd to sue your fiancé's dad, Sarah retorted. I informed her that the engagement was off. I thought they would be a little flustered if I mentioned the complaint and the breakup of the engagement, but that was not the case. Sarah said, Don't give up just because the greeting didn't go well. If you apologize, Jacob, I'll ask my dad to give you another chance. What do I have to apologize for? My blood boiled and I clearly stated, I have nothing to apologize for. I'm serious about both the breakup of the engagement and the complaint. Then Sarah arrogantly said, Playing the tragic hero, huh? My father could easily squash a little thing like a police report. He'd even make this broken engagement disappear if it happened now. Unbelievable. How dare she act so high and mighty? Then, even Sarah's dad chimed in. Sarah, we're better off without a man like this. Go ahead. File a police report if you want. I doubt you've got enough evidence for it to mean anything anyway, he said, laughing mockingly. Like father, like daughter. That phrase suddenly felt very fitting. Are you sure about that? I decided to throw a wrench in the laughing family's mood. You have no proof that I did anything, so the police can't do anything. You thought I'd back down if you mentioned a police report, didn't you? Fool. You should know better than to think that would scare me. With his hands on his hips, Sarah's father laughed confidently. That's when I decided to show him the reality of the situation. Actually, that's the evidence. Apparently not understanding what I meant. The three of them just gaped at me. I pulled out my phone and played a recording. I've been recording everything since before I arrived. I needed to gather evidence that my injuries were caused by you. No matter how high up you are in a big corporation, you can't hide from an assault charge when the evidence is all laid out, right? At this, instead of apologizing, Sarah's father started yelling at me. How dare you! Go ahead, file your report. There's no way I'm letting you marry Sarah. Sarah's mom, who had been quiet until now, began to panic. We can still forgive him if we do it now, right, honey? No need. As I said earlier, the engagement is off, and I will file a report. I don't want to marry someone who doesn't care when their fiancé is injured and who joins their parents in making fun of me. When I said that, Sarah, who had been looking down on me until just now, started to panic. You're lying, Jacob. You said you wanted to marry me. You liar. Sarah's dad then started. You low-educated punk. I'll never forgive you. And lunged at me. The shock of his punch threw me off balance, and I fell to the ground. Sarah's mom desperately tried to stop her husband, who was about to start punching me while I was down. Honey, this is bad. We don't know who might be watching. But Sarah's dad didn't stop. You're just a figurehead CEO. You lured Sarah with that. And now you're going to sue me? I'll sue you for fraud. Then I'll have to cancel our $5 million order to your company. I'd been thinking about it for a while, and I'd made up my mind. I was going to corner this man as much as possible. What are you talking about? $5 million? There's no way you can make a deal like that. Sarah's father got off me, calling me an idiot. It was time to show him reality. I called my mother. What are you going to achieve by calling your mother? Sarah told me you only have one parent. How sad that you only have your mother to help you in times like this. It really does make a difference not having a father, huh? Sarah's father, who didn't know what was coming, still looked down on me. It was almost comical. About 10 minutes later, the moment I was waiting for arrived. Sarah's father's cell phone began to ring. He said it was from his company and answered the call. At first, he spoke with clear and confident tones, but his speech gradually became sluggish, and his face turned pale. As soon as he ended the call, he glared at me, saying, What the hell have you done? I did exactly what I said earlier. I canceled the order. I didn't want to do business with a company that looks down on people for being less educated or from single-parent families. I explained calmly. But Sarah's father didn't seem convinced. There's no way someone with your low education level could do that. Do you have connections or something? He scoffed, still looking down on me for my limited education. I lost any desire to continue the conversation. Believe what you want. Goodbye, I said, and I turned on my heel. Sarah's father tried to chase after me, shouting, Wait a minute! But he was cornered by Sarah and her mother asking, What's this about, $5 million? What was that phone call about? He couldn't move. I did indeed only finish middle school, and it could be said that I just caught the startup wave. But I started a business with the money I saved with my mother, and it was successful enough to trade with major companies now. I called my mother, who was the vice president of my company, and had her contact Sarah's father's company. I didn't want to bring personal matters into work, but I had reached my limit. But when I got home and saw my mother's usual cheerful face, I felt guilty. Bringing my personal matters into it, I was finished as a CEO. I also felt sorry for having made my mother take on such an unpleasant role. Sorry, Mom, for making you make that unpleasant call, and for making us have to find another supplier. I apologized. In contrast to my apology, my mother was smiling. When I asked her why, she said, "I came up with a good idea and decided on my own without consulting you, the CEO." When my mother called the president of the other company, she reported what Sarah's father had done to me. And it seems she suggested that if Sarah's father was fired, the cancellation of the order could be revoked. Before I got home, the president of the other company called to say that Sarah's father had been fired. My mother, true to her word, seems to have continued the order. I didn't mind making the call, and we didn't have to look for another supplier. We just got rid of a nasty guy who only looked at status and insulted others. With that, my mother encouraged me as if there was nothing to worry about. After that, I received several calls and emails from Sarah pressuring me to marry her, so I blocked her number. According to a story I heard from a middle school classmate after this incident was over, Sarah knew I was the CEO and approached me at the reunion. She probably wanted to be the CEO's wife and started dating and talking about marriage with me. Sarah's father was arrested because I filed a complaint. Sarah's mother, who had been bragging about her husband working for a major company, couldn't bear the eyes of the neighborhood knowing that he had been arrested and seemed to have disappeared somewhere, leaving Sarah behind. It was a fitting ending for a mother and daughter who were only concerned about how they were seen by others. I continued my contract with the company where Sarah's father had been, and we have a good relationship now. There are also talks about new projects, and it seems that busy but fulfilling days will continue for a while.
So, you're really coming to our wedding, huh? I'll be embarrassed to introduce you as my sister-in-law to our relatives. My brother's fiancée, Lily, remarked. I'm Katie, a 37-year-old single woman who dropped out of school. I'm not ashamed of my dropout status or my singleton life at this age. In fact, I'm proud to say it's all for living happily with my precious family. My family has always been poor and fatherless since I was born. For reasons unknown, my mother bore me and my younger brother, Georgie, 2 years my junior while still unmarried. She worked relentlessly, but with 2 children to feed, we were always barely making ends meet. Sometimes a relative would come over to our home and try to give money to my mother, but she would always decline, saying, "Please, let us rely on you only when we're truly desperate. We're okay for now." When I asked my mother why she refused to accept the money, she explained, "If I just take his money, his wife might feel upset." But honestly, I wished she had taken the money. Georgie was a brilliant kid. He even topped his grade in elementary school. As an overly proud older sister, I was excited for him, thinking he was destined to become a successful person in the future. In fact, his school teacher recommended him for admission to a prestigious school, but we didn't have the money for that. He ended up going to a not-so-great school, and I felt terrible for him. So I chose to drop out of school and started working without hesitation. Well, the truth is, I hated studying, so I seized the opportunity to start working. Of course, most of the jobs available for a dropout didn't pay well, and I ended up working in a small office. But when the owner of the office decided to retire and close the business, he recommended me to a reputable company he had dealings with, and I was able to get a decent paying job there. I worked hard and even received a manager title at the age of 35, earning a salary comparable to a college graduate of the same age. However, my brother's fiancée, Lily, doesn't seem to approve of me being a dropout, especially because my brother Georgie, now a graduate of a prestigious university, is thriving as a salesman at a top-tier company called ABC Trading. Perhaps it's my single eyelid, or my not-so-friendly eyes. But from the first time she met me, Lily seemed to think of me as some kind of failed dropout who couldn't make it to college. I was shocked when Georgie told me that Lily had asked him, "Hey, is your sister like kind of a problem person?" Lily, the daughter of a director at the ABC Trading, where Georgie works, is quite a beauty, but it's hard to say she's a good person. She came to our house once and was so taken aback by our rundown apartment that she refused to come in. She complained, "Even though I dressed up so nicely, I'm getting dirty." She also felt embarrassed that her boyfriend, with whom she was in a relationship, was commuting from such a place. Borrowing the power of her father, who was the head of the department, she forcefully moved Georgie into a family housing where he should not have been able to move in. She seemed to have insisted on a ridiculous excuse that we're going to live there once we're married. There was a catch to this. Outsiders were prohibited from entering the company housing, and even close relatives had to apply each time they visited. "Oh, I guess I can't visit often. I wanted to peek at your happy newlywed wife," I joked, to which Lily's mother coldly replied, "That's precisely why we decided to have them live in a family house." Moreover, she was rude to Mother. On the day she came to our house, Lily whispered in a voice that Georgie couldn't hear, "Because your mother-in-law was poor, Georgie will have to keep paying back his student loans, even after marriage. It's natural for parents to pay for tuition, right?" And glared at Mother. The truth was that Mother and I had been saving for Georgie's college fund, but he insisted on paying it himself. In this way, Lily and Lily's mother have quite difficult personalities, but Georgie is completely aware of this, due to their feline pretensions, which are typical of celebrities. "Actually, I want my mom to move into the company house too, but Lily says the husband's siblings are not eligible to move in, so my sister-in-law will be alone." That's pitiful. When I told her that I graduated from college with a scholarship, Lily's mom said, "You want to relieve your mom as soon as possible, right? You're such a thoughtful and wonderful person." He happily talked about how kind Lily and her family were. Well, if the couple gets along well, there's no need for us to badmouth them, so we remained silent. But that was a mistake. Lily and her family started to exclude me and Mother, especially me. "Sister-in-law, do you plan to attend our wedding?" With the wedding with Georgie just half a month away, Lily suddenly contacted me. "Of course, he's my only brother. But the venue is quite luxurious, and we're expecting about 150 guests. It seems that they invited even the president and the managing director of ABC Corporation, and the higher-ups of their clients, given the marriage between the daughter of the head of the department and the promising Georgie." When I thought they might not have enough seats, she said, "I think all the guests will feel uncomfortable if there's one poor-looking sister-in-law." What? Poor-looking? I plan to wear a proper formal outfit for the wedding." Your proper is probably a suit from a catalog that costs about 10,000 yen, right? It's embarrassing to be surrounded by people wearing high-end brand clothes. Lily had judged me to be a bottom-tier person. To be frank, I don't want you to come to our wedding. Fed up with her implication that poor people should not come, I asked Lily a question. "What about my mother, then? Mother doesn't have any high-brand clothes either." "I know that, but I can't not invite Georgie, who is a promising member of the company, and I don't want to be embarrassed by the shabby appearance of me or my relatives, so we'll prepare Mother's clothes." I was incredibly upset by the way Lily spoke, but it's obviously better to dress appropriately if people from top-notch companies are attending. I desperately tried to interpret it as her being considerate, so that Mother wouldn't be embarrassed at Georgie's big event, but I was taken aback by her next words. "Of course, you will have to buy that dress. It's an Oscar de la Renta evening dress, so please prepare about $10,000 in total." Wait, I can't afford such an amount." "If you can't pay, you will have to. Or do you plan to stand next to my parents in a cheap dress?" I was flabbergasted and asked what Georgie thought. "I haven't told Georgie yet." Of course, he thinks you and Mother will attend, but it will tarnish his future if his mother is unmarried and his sister is a dropout. No, I think nowadays, having a family of single mothers or dropouts doesn't affect a person's career. I didn't want to lose to Lily's prejudice, so I yelled, "Anyway, it's my only brother's wedding, so both Mother and I will attend the wedding. We'll prepare the clothes, so we won't pay for it. If you really can't stand it, just don't invite us." Then I told Mother everything and asked for her advice. Mother looked downcast for a while, but eventually looked up and said cheerfully, "Don't worry, Katie. I promise you I will make Georgie happy. Just leave it to me." She then started to make a phone call and eventually revealed something astounding. On the wedding day, a solemn ceremony was held in the chapel first. I had been worried about whether or not I should tell Georgie about what Lily had said, but since I had left everything to Mother, I decided to remain silent. However, Georgie's expression seemed stiff. Was it just nerves, or had Mother told him something? After the ceremony, I was taken aback when I looked at the seating chart at the reception venue. Mother's name was the only one written in the family section, and I couldn't find my seat anywhere. Wait, there's no seat for me. Even though I said I would be attending, they were really trying to exclude me from the reception. Just then, Lily's parents showed up, giving me a disdainful look. "I can't believe you didn't understand when Lily told you not to come to the reception. We let you attend the wedding ceremony because we had no choice, but we can't stand having you spread your poverty around the reception. Go home, dropout sister." Ah, like mother, like daughter. Fine, I'll go home then. As I turned my back on Lily's parents, who were smirking, there was the CEO of Nikomimi Corporation, a listed company and business partner of Lily's father, standing with Georgie. "Mr. Ashcroft, thank you so much for coming!" "Katie, you're in the way!" "Sorry about that, Mr. Ashcroft. We were just getting rid of an unwanted guest." Then Mr. Ashcroft spoke. "If you insist on kicking Katie out, I, as her father, will also abstain from the reception." "Huh? Father?" What do you mean?" They both stared blankly, unable to believe what Mr. Ashcroft had said. Seeing this, Mr. Ashcroft repeated himself. "As I said, Katie is my daughter." As it turns out, Mr. Ashcroft and Mother were in a relationship in their 20s. Mr. Ashcroft was an executive and the future CEO at the time, while Mother had lost her parents in an accident and was alone. Their relationship wasn't blessed from the start. Furthermore, when Mother got pregnant with me, Nikomimi Corporation, Mr. Ashcroft's father's company, was on the verge of bankruptcy. Everyone opposed their marriage, saying it would do nothing to help rebuild the company. So Mother proposed to put their marriage on hold until the company was back on its feet. She became a single mother, raising me with a love she had for Mr. Ashcroft, despite the societal stigma. But the company's situation had not improved significantly when Mother got pregnant with Georgie. When the daughter of the CEO of a certain company, who had offered help, proposed marriage to Mr. Ashcroft, Mother decided to step back, saying, "I'll raise our 2 kids properly. You don't have to acknowledge them. Just please be happy with that woman and revive your company." After marrying the CEO's daughter, Mr. Ashcroft not only revived his company, but also grew it to the point where it became a listed company. However, we were not blessed with children, and divorced a year ago due to my wife's infidelity. Afterward, I proposed to reunite with Mother. A few days before Georgie's wedding, I met with Ashcroft, the company president, and my father. "Oh, I've seen this person before." Yes, he was the uncle who had visited our apartment a few times during my childhood, trying to give my mother some money. He turned out to be President Ashcroft. When I involuntarily stared at him, he smiled at me and said, "You've really gone through a lot. I've heard from your mother about the wedding this time." He shared his thoughts with me. President Ashcroft, who had become Georgie's business partner, knew well about Georgie's capabilities. "I would like him to take over Nikomimi Corporation, if possible. But if he fails to see the true nature of malicious people and disregards his mother and sister, I can't possibly entrust the company to him. So he was trying to investigate Georgie's character, using his wedding. The day before the wedding, President Ashcroft and Mother called Georgie and revealed the truth about their relationship, and that the Lilly family was trying to exclude Mother and me. Suddenly confronted with various revelations, Georgie, who had trusted Lilly and her parents, approached the wedding with mixed feelings. That's why he looked stiff during the ceremony. However, when he saw that my name was not on the reception seating chart, and observed Lily's parents trying to drive me out of the venue, he was convinced that what Mother and I had told him was true. Georgie brought Lily to the reception desk and declared, "Lily, Mr. and Mrs. Lilly, I will annul this marriage. I have no intention of becoming a family with people who belittle and disregard my precious mother and sister." Wait, just hold on. You can't just say something like that all of a sudden. Yes, that's right. It's a misunderstanding. Besides, we've already held the ceremony. The two were in a fluster, but Lily, who hadn't grasped the situation, dropped the bomb. Huh? Georgie, are you choosing that lowlife mother and daughter over me? You should know your place. Lily's parents, turning pale, tried to restrain her, but it was too late. When I explained the situation to Lily in detail, she collapsed on the spot and broke into tears. Furthermore, President Ashcroft said, "I guess we'll have to reconsider our business with your company," causing Lily's parents to burst into tears and apologize profusely. Everyone at the reception saw this, and the reception was ultimately canceled. Georgie cut ties with Lily completely without submitting the marriage registration. Afterward, I received a phone call from Lily, screaming in rage. "You're the reason I couldn't marry Georgie. I'll be billing you for compensation and the cancellation fee for the venue." But when I responded, "Oh really? Then I'll sue you for defamation," everyone at the reception heard the abusive language from you and your parents. She fell silent. Furthermore, I mentioned how her father had been removed from handling transactions with Nikomimi Corporation, demoted, and sidelined. I should probably tell your father that I was threatened by Lily. Then, Nikomimi Corporation might completely stop dealing with ABC Trading. Won't your dad definitely lose his job? Ignoring Lily, who was crying her eyes out, I hung up the phone on my end. Serves her right. Georgie, who had canceled his marriage to Lily, later transferred to Nikomimi Corporation, and seems to be working hard to become his father's right-hand man. Mother and father are getting married soon. Mother is shy about having a wedding after turning 60, but she looks genuinely happy when we pick out her wedding dress together. I've been devoted to my work up until now, but I've started to think that maybe one day I'd like to wear Mother's wedding dress.
Lately, something seemed off with my mom, who lives alone. The first thing that came to my mind was Alzheimer's. I suggested to my husband and mother-in-law that my mom move in with us, but they didn't agree. Worse, my husband said, "If you push this, we're getting a divorce. Just leave." Fine, I get it. If you want me to leave, I will, but you will regret it. My name is Astoria, 35 years old. I work from home as an illustrator. Currently, I live with my husband, Powell, and my mother-in-law. A few years ago, after the passing of my father-in-law, we decided to live with my mother-in-law. I was concerned about her, so I agreed to this arrangement. We had just built a new house, so space wasn't an issue. We easily prepared a room for her. However, my husband doesn't earn much. We couldn't afford a house on our own, so my mom helped us financially. My mother-in-law seemed thrilled about the decision, especially since Powell is her only son. After the loss of her husband, she began to smile more and seemed to regain her spirit in a few months. But that peace didn't last long. About 6 months into our living arrangement, she started picking on me. One morning, after eating the breakfast I prepared, she sighed heavily. "Ah, this tastes terrible." "What?" "I've thought this for a while now, Astoria. Why do you serve me such salty food? What's your intention?" I'm sorry. I tasted it before serving. I don't want to hear excuses. Are you trying to send me to an early grave with all this salt? No, I didn't mean to. And when I'd be working in my room, she would barge in without knocking. Astoria, stop hiding in your room and do some housework. But I'm working right now. Work? Sitting at your computer and drawing isn't work. How is that a job? This is my job. Yes, I draw, but it's not just for fun. Don't talk back to me. If you do, I'll tell Powell you're neglecting your duties. That's not true. But that was just the beginning. She even started asking me for money. Just $500 will do, Astoria. I can't afford that right now. Stingy. Aren't you earning money with your computer? It's so cheeky of her to mention earning only when she wants money. In the end, I gave in and handed her the money. This went on for a while, and with my work suffering, my frustration grew. I couldn't take it anymore and decided to talk to my husband. Hey, Powell, can we talk?
What? I just got back from work and I'm tired.
I'm sorry, but can we do something about your mom?
What about her?
She interrupts my work daily, complains about the chores, and even asks for money. I can't get any work done and it's really stressing me out. He looked annoyed and responded sarcastically.
You know, you don't have to consult me about every little thing.
What?
When mom acts like that, it means you're not doing your job as a wife, right? It's your fault. Besides, she's a housewife. Why can't you just give her some spending money willingly?
Wait a minute, I do all the housework, and why should I be the one giving her money?
Because if you were doing the housework properly, she wouldn't be upset. Understand that? Think of the money as a token of gratitude. It's a fee for her guidance on your poor housekeeping.
That's not... I was dizzy from my husband's unexpected words. Instead of support, he blamed me. He continued looking down at me.
Listen, you're the wife here. You're married into my family. Just listen and do as you're told.
But...
Quiet. Mom has been a housewife longer than you. She knows more. Her word is law. Got it?
But...
From now on, if you upset Mom, I won't forgive you. Just do your job as a wife perfectly. Understand?
With a face like a gargoyle, he stormed out of the room. Tears streamed down my face. Why is it always me? Why am I the one being blamed? We started living together thinking it was a good thing, but I never expected it to turn out like this. I deeply regretted agreeing to live with them. One day, I felt like hearing my mom's voice, so I called her. Mom, it's me, Astoria. Oh, Astoria. It's been so long since you last called. What have you been up to? It's only been 2 days since we last spoke. What are you talking about? You haven't contacted me in 2 months. What? I had a bad feeling our conversation wasn't making sense. The word Alzheimer's crossed my mind. Worried, I took my mom to the hospital the next day. My fears were confirmed. She was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Though it was mild, the doctor said it would be difficult for her to live alone. She had me late in life, so she's already well into her 70s. I couldn't believe that my energetic mom had Alzheimer's. That night, I told my husband and mother-in-law about the diagnosis. Mother-in-law, Powell, I need to talk to you about something. They both looked annoyed. What is it? It's probably nothing important.
Is it even relevant to us?
It's about my mom. Today, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. What? Alzheimer's?
Your mom? Seriously?
Yes, so about what we should do. Before I could finish, they burst into laughter. Poor thing, having Alzheimer's. I don't want to be involved with sick people.
Right, how weak must her brain be to get Alzheimer's at her age?
Wait, why are you saying such things? Ignoring my confusion, they continued laughing. People who get Alzheimer's are those who don't think much in their daily lives.
Yeah, just like you, not thinking much. That's why you'll get Alzheimer's.
Stop it. How can you say such cruel things? Why not? It's the truth, right?
Yeah, Mom, we're just telling the truth.
This is too much. Everything went dark as their cruelty overwhelmed me.
You're not thinking of taking care of your mom, are you?
Well, I was hoping, if possible, for her to live with us here.
What? Are you kidding me? Why should we live with someone with Alzheimer's?
She's not just someone with Alzheimer's, she's still in her early stages and can take care of herself.
That's not the point. We're not living with her, period.
I accepted living with your mother, so why not mine? Suddenly, my husband slammed the table and glared at me.
Don't compare a healthy person like my mom to your sick mother, got it? I will never agree to live with her.
But if something happens to her, I'll regret it forever.
I don't care about your regrets. You married into this family. Just listen to us.
No matter how much I tried to persuade them, their stance remained unchanged. So I made another proposal. If we can't live together, at least let me visit her regularly.
What? If you do that, we'll take care of the house.
I'll manage the housework. I'm just really worried about her, please.
No?
Why not?
Obviously, every time you visit her, it will cost money. And we will have to pay for her medical bills. Our finances will suffer.
It's my money.
No, you're not visiting her. End of story.
Far from living with Mom, I was not even allowed to go to her place and I'm completely stuck in all directions. Even mother-in-law, who was listening to the conversation, added a blow to me. Astoria, do you even understand your position here? Mother-in-law, please, I am really worried about her. Enough. You're part of the Brown family now. Just listen to Powell and me. But enough. If you keep this up, we'll divorce. How dare you defy us? Get out. Hearing the word divorce from her, my husband joined in, barely holding back his laughter.
Hey, divorce sounds good. We don't need a wife who prioritizes a sick person over her own family.
Are you serious?
You call yourself an illustrator, but you barely make anything. You're so arrogant.
It's a real job.
Enough. Let's divorce. If you want to take care of a sick person so badly, just leave.
All the anger I had been holding back exploded. I won't let them mock me or my mom. They're not my family anymore. If that's how they feel, I'll leave. With my mind made up, I told them, fine, if that's how you feel, I'll leave. For a moment, they looked shocked, but then they smirked.
Good. Do what you want. Just leave quickly.
I never thought you would leave on your own. I'm so happy. I'll pack my things and go back to my parents' house, send the divorce papers by mail.
Sure thing. I'll get them from the courthouse tomorrow and send them right over.
This is perfect. Just my lovely son and me living together. I'll go pack my things now.
Hurry up. We're having a party with Mom tonight.
Sounds great. Let's go out for steak. This family is done. Watching them celebrate, I quickly started packing. Soon, with the two of them smiling broadly, I left that house behind. A few days later, I received divorce papers from my husband, which I promptly signed and submitted. When I told my mom, she looked apologetic. I'm so sorry, Astoria. This is all because of me. Don't be silly. I feel so much better without those terrible people as family. When you first mentioned living together, I was actually worried. That mother-in-law, she's a bit off, right? I should have stopped the construction of the new house more firmly. I'm truly sorry. Don't apologize. I'm happy now, living here with you. Astoria, thank you so much. So, is that matter all settled? Yes, it's all good. I'm already on it. I showed her the documents and my mom smirked mischievously. That's right. I won't let it end with just a divorce. My revenge is just beginning. 2 weeks later, just as I expected, I received a frantic call from my husband.
Hey, what the hell are you thinking?
What do you mean?
You know what I mean. I got the house sale documents. You sent them, didn't you?
Yes, I did. It's all written there. Any problems?
Don't play games. Selling our house, I'll never allow it.
The first thing I did after divorcing my husband was to sell the house we lived in with his mother. He seemed to have forgotten about the time we built the house and angrily confronted me.
Why can't you sell that house? It's ours.
Ours? Really?
It's our marital property. We're divorced, so we need to split the assets fairly.
His absurd claim made me burst into laughter. Are you kidding? Split assets? Don't make me laugh.
What's so funny?
Do you even realize why we were always short on money?
That's because you never earned enough. I have savings.
You're wrong.
What?
I had to give money to your mother almost every day. That's why my savings are almost gone. If we were to split assets, I would just take half of your savings.
You're joking, right?
It seemed he didn't know that my savings were almost depleted. Still, he persisted.
But we have the house, our house.
I told you, I'm selling it.
You can't decide that on your own. My mom and I live here. If you insist on selling, give me half the sale price.
Remember when we bought the house, my mom paid for it in full because we couldn't get a loan?
Did she?
Yes, at that time I wasn't earning much and you had just changed jobs with a low salary. My mom paid for the whole thing. I recently checked the property deed with her. The house is in her name.
Oh, I remember now. I left everything to you.
I thought so. But now you understand, right? We don't have the right to decide whether to sell the house. It's up to my mom. And she's on my side, get it?
Damn it.
Finally realizing his position, my husband pleaded in a tearful voice.
Please, wait. What will happen to my mom and me without this house?
I don't care. We filed for divorce, so we are strangers now. I owe you nothing.
Don't say that. I apologize for everything. Just leave the house, please.
So what's your plan? Buy the house in full from my mom?
Don't joke. That's impossible, you heartless woman.
My husband seemed to have let his true feelings slip, showing an awkward reaction with a hesitant, oh. Seizing the moment, I fired back at him. Now you're asking for help? You think that's going to fly after all this time? Are you out of your mind? After all the times you and your mom belittled me, you think we can just pretend it never happened? You brought this on yourself.
Please, wait. I'm begging you.
I'm genuinely relieved to cut ties with you and your terrible mother. From now on, it's just me and my mom. I couldn't care less about what happens to you two. I hope you both sink to the lowest depths together. I hung up the phone without waiting for a response and blocked his number. And just like that, I was finally free from them. Later on, I heard they moved out of their house and started living in a cramped apartment. With his meager salary and his mother, who had only ever been a housewife, their downfall was easy to imagine. Now, his mother apparently works a hectic part-time job at a supermarket. On the other hand, my mom and I are living peacefully. Thankfully, her Alzheimer's is still in the early stages. However, I know it's going to get tougher in the future. That's why I want to spend as much time as possible with my mom, my only family. I've made a promise to myself to cherish every moment I have left with her.
You didn't have to get so angry about it. It was just a misunderstanding about the child.
I was beyond angry and appalled that my husband could seriously say such a thing. I wondered how I could make him understand. As I was contemplating my response, I heard a voice from the seat behind us. Hey, can you believe that? This guy is the worst. I don't even want to breathe the same air as him. As I turned around, I saw a young couple. My husband, realizing they were talking about him, stood up. The girl stared straight at him and began to speak again. My name is Linda. I'm a 28-year-old homemaker. This is the 3rd year of my marriage to my husband, Robert. Even after 2 years of marriage, I couldn't get pregnant. But around the time we were discussing visiting a gynecologist next month, I found out that we were pregnant. During my pregnancy, my husband Robert took excessive care of me. Not only did he carry heavy things for me, but he also accompanied me whenever I went out. He read parenting magazines, suggesting which diapers were best and promised to take care of any nighttime crying. My mother-in-law was also very kind. 2 years ago, when my mother passed away, she worried about me because I chose not to go back to my hometown, so she also tried to help me in any way she could. I was filled with happiness, thinking that they would love our child even more once he or she was born. However, reality would betray my expectations. The day I went into labor, I contacted Robert immediately since he was at work. Even though he claimed to be in a slow season, he didn't respond at all. This was the first time something like this had happened, so I endured the pain, filled with anxiety. About 6 hours later, I gave birth to a baby girl, but there was still no contact from Robert, and I was worried that he might have been in an accident. I told a nurse about this and she contacted my mother-in-law for me. She said she would come right away, so I was anxiously waiting. My mother-in-law arrived at the hospital room within about 20 minutes, and behind her was Robert, whom we hadn't been able to reach. I remembered having contacted him, but he was supposed to come the next day. Confused, I asked Robert, Robert, where have you been? Didn't you see my messages? You know, I wanted you to be present at the birth. I was worried you might have had an accident. Robert frowned at my words and looked away as if he was uncomfortable. Unable to understand his attitude, I could only tilt my head in confusion. Seeing Robert not even looking at our child sleeping peacefully beside me, I started to feel anxious. Then, my mother-in-law glaring at me shouted out, "How dare you deceive us all this time?" Huh? Deceive? What are you talking about, Mom? My mother-in-law's face turned red. Robert, as always, frowned and looked away. My son Robert is sterile. This baby is not his. You had an affair and now you're trying to make Robert raise that child? What? Wait a minute, sterile? Just to be clear, I never cheated on my husband, so our daughter is truly, without a doubt, his child.
You know, I would have been happy with just the two of us, he said, struggling to get the words out. But you wanted a child. I thought that if I could accept that child, everything would be all right. But in the end, I just couldn't stand it.
My husband, he poured out his heart like that. On hearing this, my mother-in-law became even more incensed. How dare you betray my kind-hearted son? He confessed everything to me yesterday. You're getting a divorce and we will be seeking alimony. Wait, a divorce? Hold on, this must be a mistake. I didn't cheat. If need be, I'm willing to have a DNA test done on our daughter and Robert. Before I could finish, the hospital room door burst open with a loud bang. Startled, I turned to see my father standing there. He stormed over to me and in a fit of rage, slapped me across the face. You disgrace! You betrayed your husband by having an affair. I'm cutting all ties with you and you are not getting any inheritance. Ouch! Dad, wait! I didn't cheat. But he cut me off, slapping me again. The pain in my cheek throbbed, and tears welled up in my eyes. My mother-in-law, my husband, and now my father, they all scorned me. I desperately denied the accusations, but no one believed me. Just as I was about to utter the word divorce, the door swung open again. Excuse me, a nurse entered the room. I'm sorry, but we asked for quiet in the hospital. I don't know the circumstances, but new mothers are quite sensitive. This could lead to postpartum depression, so please refrain from discussing such matters. What are you talking about barging in here like that? This has nothing to do with postpartum depression. To my mother-in-law's protest, the nurse smiled and responded, Well, if anything were to happen because of this, part of our job is to ensure the safety of our patients. I hate to intrude, but I'll have to ask you to leave. My mother-in-law grumbled and left, seemingly overpowered by the nurse's insistence. My husband and father also left the room, and finally tranquility returned. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cause trouble. Don't worry about it, our job is to protect the mother. Besides, I know for a fact that you, Linda, wouldn't have an affair. The nurse called me by my name, and I looked at her. I must have met her somewhere before, but still not able to place her, she smiled at me. I have lost a lot of weight since then, so I can understand if you don't recognize me. Remember, we went to high school together. Mary, do you remember? Mary? No way! Is it really you? At the familiar name, I was taken aback. Mary was a friend from high school, a quiet and gentle girl. Before she joined our friend group, she was teased about her figure by some other girls. I don't remember how it happened, but she started spending time with us. We shared a love for cartoons and comics, talking about it every day. However, I never would have guessed that the slender, beautiful woman in front of me was the same person. I can't believe it. You moved away so suddenly and we lost contact. I have been worried. I'm sorry, my parents divorced and I had to cancel my cell phone. My mom's family is from here, so I moved hastily. I see. I'm glad you seem to be doing well. Thanks for everything earlier. When they said those things to me, I didn't know what to do. Mary hugged me and stroked my head. It felt comforting, just like when my mother, who passed away 2 years ago, used to do. I'll explain to the ward nurses to make sure they can visit. Right now, you need to rest your exhausted body after giving birth. It's important for the baby too, right? I sighed in relief at Mary's words. But I have nowhere else to go after I'm discharged from the hospital except for that house. Seeing my gloomy face, Mary made a proposal. Actually, I live still at my mom's old house. We have extra rooms. Would you like to come stay with us? What? At your house? I was surprised and raised my voice. Mary was looking at me seriously. That's right, the current situation isn't good for you or your daughter. And if you go back, you'll be blamed by those people and your dad. Divorce is inevitable anyway, so let's fight this together. I can't stand to see you suffer like this. Tears welled up in Mary's eyes. I decided to rely on her, who was seriously considering me and my daughter. I got permission from the doctor and left the hospital half a day early. I told my husband that I would be discharged in the evening, but to be safe, I left from the back entrance and went to Mary's house. You made it. Here's your room. Please, take it easy for at least a month while you recover. Mary's mother showed me to the room. The room was filled with a baby bed and all kinds of baby gear. Let us know if there is anything you need. I cried tears of gratitude for Mary's kindness. After I finished breastfeeding and had a break, Mary's mother started to talk. I have a hunch about this. It's hard to say, but I think your husband is probably cheating. My ex-husband was thinking the same thing back then. Hearing Mary's mother's words, it felt like I had been hit over the head with a blunt object. But at the same time, I couldn't help but agree, because recently, there were many times when I couldn't contact my husband during the day. He works at my father-in-law's company doing sales. It's not a large company, so they were flexible, allowing him to work from home outside of client meetings when I had morning sickness and giving him time off for every prenatal checkup. However, he started telling me he was busy about 6 months ago, and I often went to the checkups alone. Even when I sent him a shopping list during the day, he often didn't read it. I didn't suspect him of cheating because he said he was busy and he was home every night except when we were invited to my in-laws' house. A private investigator who helped me back then is my relative. He can introduce a lawyer as well. If nothing comes out of the investigation, that's good. But don't you want to know why he suddenly said those things? I nodded at her words. Mary's mother immediately contacted that person and they started the investigation the next day. About 2 weeks later, the information that the detective brought was just as Mary's mother had said. I can't believe this is happening. I burst into tears and Mary held me until I calmed down. The woman my husband cheated on me with was in her early 20s. She seemed to have joined my father-in-law's company half a year ago. She was a stunning beauty and all the men in the office were head over heels for her. Apparently, my husband was no exception. He ended up driving her home from a company-held summer party when she had too much to drink, and that's when their physical relationship started. After that, they would say they were going out for business in a day, but they would be at a hotel or her place doing God knows what. And what surprised me the most was that my mother-in-law knew about this woman and even welcomed her. Apparently, she had been hoping for a granddaughter and dreamed of beautiful children when she found out the mistress was young and beautiful. She encouraged them to go on dates during work hours and actively cooperated. She even helped cover for him when he claimed to be on business trips and was actually vacationing or staying overnight with the other woman. The woman was even apparently going to a gynecologist to work on getting pregnant. It was dizzying. What a despicable bunch. Linda did nothing wrong. Mary was trembling with rage next to me, stunned. Linda, what do you want to do? Do you still want to continue this marriage after all this? No, I have woken up to reality. I am going to get him to pay proper damages. That's right. That's the way to go. We are with you all the way. Don't hold back when you're hurting. Just let it all out. I'll call the attorney now. Let's get ready. Mary's mother briskly began making preparations. The attorney went through the documents as soon as he arrived.
This is unbelievable. Let's start with a DNA test. We'll clearly demonstrate that you have done nothing wrong.
I nodded in agreement. We incorporated a DNA test into the divorce conditions along with providing proof. The response from my husband was a resounding no. It's obvious if they tested, it would prove his blood relationship with the child. His side was trying to avoid testing, but the attorney didn't relent and the test was performed. It was officially recognized that the child was his, and then I demanded a divorce and damages. Of course, I also claimed damages from the mistress. The mistress had only told her parents she was planning to marry the president's son. When they found out he was already married, they were absolutely livid. After they covered her share of the damages, they apparently threw her into a relative's motel. My husband, the moment the other woman was gone, refused to divorce. I was fooled. The only one I really love is you. When he said such clinched lines over the phone, I thought I was going to throw up. The attorney did his best, but the divorce discussions weren't progressing. So as a last resort, we decided to have a meeting with my husband and the attorney. The meeting could have been at the attorney's office, but to avoid any violent outbreaks, we decided on a diner a little ways away from where we live. The moment my husband saw my face, he broke down in tears. It was clear performance and I showed my disgust, but he was too absorbed in his own crying to notice. Now, about the divorce, why the hell is a stranger pushing the conversation forward? My husband's scream echoed through the diner. Well, he is my lawyer, isn't he? Don't yell, you're causing a scene in the restaurant. At my words, my husband looked dumbfounded for a moment but quickly broke into a laugh. Come on, we aren't divorcing, so why need a lawyer? Send him home and let's talk about our future, just the two of us. Come on, stop being stubborn and come back home. Your mother is waiting too. It was just a misunderstanding about the kid. You don't have to get so upset, do you? I was beyond angry at my husband, who could say such things in earnest. I wondered how I could make him understand. I was thinking of a reply when, "Hey, can you believe it? That guy, he's the worst. I don't want to breathe the same air as him." I turned towards the voice coming from the seat behind us, and there was a young couple. Realizing that they were talking about him, my husband stood up, but the girl just looked at him straight in the eye and said, "How can such a jerk really exist? Hey, promise you won't turn out like him." Of course, he is not only a failed man, but a failed human being too. Being ridiculed by someone much younger, my husband's face turned red with anger. What could you kids possibly know? Adults have their own circumstances. Stay quiet. How can you deny your wife and child? What kind of circumstances can justify that? I don't understand and I don't want to. The high school girl snapped back at him and my husband was left speechless. I handed my husband the divorce papers and documents detailing alimony and child support. There is no point talking to you anymore. If you won't sign this here, shall we meet in court? Court? Wait a minute. Don't talk like that. If this goes to court, it could affect my father's company's reputation. The company of the man I'm divorcing is no longer of my concern. Hearing my words, my husband sank to the ground. He signed the papers in front of him and stumbled out of the restaurant. Afterwards, I submitted the divorce papers and was granted a divorce. I received a lump sum for child support and alimony, which helped cover my immediate expenses. As I was looking for a rental using that money, I was stopped by Mary. Mary confessed that she could not have children and did not have a desire to get married, but she loved children and wanted to at least witness their birth, so she became an OBGYN nurse. I know it's presumptuous request, but I would like to raise a child with you. Can I help you until you're settled in your life? I was very grateful for Mary's offer and gladly accepted. While my child was small, I decided to live at Mary's place. When I asked her why she helped me, she told me that I had protected her when she was teased a long time ago. When I said I didn't remember that, Mary laughed and said that was the good part about me. My father, who had made a nonsensical excuse when he learned the truth, was promptly cut off. About 2 months later, he sprained his ankle falling down some stairs. He called me asking to take care of him because he couldn't move, but I hung up after saying, "We have cut ties." Although parenting was overwhelming, I decided to live my life to the fullest while protecting my daughter.
Mom, look at this funny balloon I found. A delighted 4-year-old daughter walks into the living room, her voice bubbling with excitement. The moment I see what she's holding, I almost scream. It's unmistakably something meant for adults. Where on earth did you find that? Ignoring my panicked reaction, my daughter responds, "It was in Dad's bag." She then starts blowing air into the elongated object to play with it. My father-in-law, who's also in the living room, looks frozen, unsure of what to do. "I'll buy you one in a prettier color, sweetie. Please give that one to Mommy." With a forced smile, I take the item from my daughter's hands. Later, when my daughter is not around, my father-in-law and I check my husband's luggage from his business trip and discover something even more shocking. Please stay tuned for the disturbing truth revealed by my daughter's innocent actions, my subsequent revenge, and the fate of the betrayer. My name is Marcia. I'm 33 years old and married. My husband Morris and I were classmates in veterinary school. Before graduating, we both obtained our veterinary licenses, deepening our relationship as a couple of veterinarians. After 5 years of dating, we got married and began working at Morris's family veterinary clinic, leading us to live with my father-in-law, Andreas. Andreas is not only a wonderful veterinarian, but also a great person. He adores our daughter, Alicia, who was born in our 2nd year of marriage. Thanks to him, living together has been stress-free, and I've come to think of Andreas as a real father. Our family consists of me, my husband Morris, our daughter Alicia, and our pet toy poodle, Earl. We were a harmonious family of 4 humans and 1 pet living peacefully. But at some point, things began to cast a shadow over our lives. Morris started acting strangely. He began spending more time away from home, citing conferences and study sessions, and became glued to his cell phone. His attitude toward me also grew colder. On an unforgettable day, my birthday, Morris said he'd be late because of a study session. In his place, Andreas bought a cake, and Alicia and I celebrated as a trio. "Happy birthday, Mommy!" 4-year-old Alicia claps her hands, smiling at me.
"Happy birthday, Marcia. Go ahead, blow out the candles."
Though Morris's absence felt lonely, I was happy to have 2 people celebrating with me, and I blew out the candles on the cake. I remember even Earl seemed to pick up on the festive mood, hopping around joyfully. After putting Alicia to bed, I was sitting alone in the living room when Morris finally came home late. "Welcome home. You're quite late, aren't you?"
"I had to work, so it can't be helped."
Morris spoke tersely and seemed ready to prepare for bed right away. "Don't you have something to say? Today was my birthday, you know."
"Oh, was it? I forgot."
I was hurt by Morris's words. Until last year, he'd give me not just a cake and birthday presents, but even a bouquet of flowers. Morris noticed my downcast expression and clicked his tongue, but then seemed to have an idea.
"Oh, I do have a present for you."
"Really? Where is it?" Morris handed me what appeared to be an expensive brand lipstick. However, it wasn't even wrapped. Although it seemed to be a luxury item and even looked brand new. "I appreciate it, but this shade is a bit too young for me." Looking at the lipstick color and saying this apologetically, Morris grimaced.
"If you're going to complain, give it back so I can throw it away."
No, you bought it for me, so thank you." Although he'd never given me lipstick before, I found it a bit odd, but accepted the gift nonetheless. Up until that point, I had always trusted Morris. About a month later, Morris said he was attending another conference and would be gone for 3 days and 2 nights in a different town. While Morris was away, Andreas and I managed the animal hospital.
Morris sure has been enthusiastic about conferences and study sessions lately.
Well, it's not a bad thing to actively learn and acquire new knowledge.
I'm planning on retiring soon and having Morris take over the animal hospital. It's great that he wants to be a good veterinarian, but I hope he's not neglecting the family.
I hesitated for a moment at his words, but then quickly replied, "We're fine. I understand it's for his work."
He's lucky to have such an understanding wife.
2 days later, Morris came home, but as soon as he arrived, he began preparing to leave again, without even unpacking his travel bags. I was bewildered by his unexpected behavior, especially since I had prepared dinner for him. Without even giving me a glance, Morris hurriedly left. That's when Alicia came downstairs from her room.
Mom, isn't Dad back?
I rubbed Alicia's head gently and told her that her father had some errands and had to go out again.
Boring. He was away for work, right? Does he have a present for Alicia?
We'll have to ask when he gets back. I told Alicia this, and then headed to the kitchen to prepare dinner. In the living room, Andreas was relaxing, but he looked deeply perplexed by Morris's actions. It was only a few minutes later that something else happened.
Mommy, look, I found a balloon.
Alicia burst into the living room, her voice bubbling with excitement. Did we even have a balloon in the house? Just as I thought that and turned to look at Alicia, I froze. What Alicia was holding was unmistakably an adult's, well, you know.
This thing is all sticky.
Alicia said that as she blew into the elongated balloon and played around with it. Andreas was staring at Alicia, his eyes wide open.
Marcia, you should really keep your marital aids hidden better.
That's not ours, I promise. We don't have anything like that. Alicia, I'll buy you a prettier balloon. Just give that to Mommy, please.
Aw, why? It's fun.
I somehow managed to coax the object away from Alicia. To be clear, we hadn't used such an item since Alicia was born, so I was sure it wasn't ours. Alicia, where did you find this?
It was in Daddy's bag. I was looking for souvenirs.
Hearing Alicia's mumbled words, I rushed to the entranceway. There was Morris's business luggage that he had left earlier, and his business bag was open. It must have been this that Alicia touched. Andreas had silently come up behind me, and we nodded at each other in understanding. Andreas told Alicia to go play upstairs with our dog Earl, and she reluctantly obeyed. After making sure Alicia went upstairs, Andreas and I carried Morris's business bag and carry-on case into a private room on the first floor. We open it and are shocked. Inside are multiple so-called adult toys and provocative women's lingerie.
Marcia, you have no idea about this stuff, right?
No, none at all. I answer with a trembling voice. That's when I notice an unfamiliar laptop at the bottom of the case. It's not locked, so we open it. When we open the messaging app on the desktop, we see cringeworthy exchanges between a man and a woman. Morris, had a great time on the trip. Let's do it again. Quickly followed by inappropriate content.
How did you find using that?
Morris asks, to which Carolina shamelessly gives her honest opinion. I get goosebumps the entire time I'm reading. Andreas and I look at the inappropriate items in Morris's bag as if we're looking at something filthy. While capturing the message screen with my shaky hands on my phone, I scroll back a little and find something even more crushing. It's a text sent on the night of my birthday.
Hey, listen to this.
Morris cheerfully begins, recounting an event to an eager Carolina. It turns out that the branded lipstick he gave me was originally a gift intended for Carolina. Apparently, Carolina rejected it, saying, "It's not my taste." And Morris decided to palm it off on me. Carolina found this amusing and kept making belittling comments like, "I wish I could have seen that old hag misunderstanding and looking foolish." As I read, a vein in my temple throbs with anger. Not only did he cheat on me, but he's also making a complete fool out of me. I'll never forgive him. Andreas leans in, his voice tinged with concern.
Marcia, you okay?
Yes, Andreas, but I can't let this go.
I get it. Anything I can do?
Thank you. Would you mind helping me? Andreas nods, signaling the start of my plot for revenge. Andreas and I discreetly put everything back to normal to keep Morris from catching on. A few weeks later, Andreas had already told us he would be out for the night, so I let Morris know that I was taking Alicia back to my parents' place. "You'll be alone tonight, so please take care of Earl."
Sure thing. I'll even take him to the grooming salon. Take care.
Morris, clearly in a good mood, sees us off and stays home alone. Several hours later, while at my parents' house with Alicia, I get a call from Andreas.
Marcia, they've entered the house.
Actually, Andreas staying out was a ruse. We suspected that if we left, Morris would invite Carolina over. Sure enough, it happened just the way we thought. I left Alicia with my mom and headed back to our home, the battleground. When I arrived, Andreas, now acting as a stern lookout, was waiting.
Morris and Carolina entered the house about 40 minutes ago.
I guess it's time. Let's go. Andreas and I quietly unlocked the door and entered the house. The moment we did, we heard voices we shouldn't have. They were coming from everywhere in the house. We rushed to the living room, and there he was, Morris, in the middle of something with a woman I didn't recognize. I quickly raised my camera and took a series of photos.
Hey, stop! What are you doing?
Noticing us, Morris pulls away from Carolina and reaches for my camera. But Andreas stops him. I take the opportunity to gather the clothes scattered on the floor. "Hey, give those back!" Carolina cries out in panic. I snapped back at her. "I think we've got a lot to talk about first. Sit down." Overwhelmed by my fierce demeanor, Morris and Carolina reluctantly sit down on the floor. "So, what's going on here, Morris?"
It's a misunderstanding. Just a lapse in judgment.
"Really? Cheating in our own home, huh? And who's this woman?"
She's, Earl's groomer?
That's when it clicked. I finally recognized Carolina. She worked at the grooming salon where we take our dog Earl. Morris usually handles Earl's grooming, so they must have met there. "I can't believe you're cheating with someone like her."
Look, it's not...
Interrupting Morris's hesitant reply, Carolina raises her voice. "Enough, Morris. Yes, we're in love, just like you say." I was stunned by Carolina's bold proclamation. Then, Morris suddenly found his courage.
Carolina's right. I love her, and I'm going to divorce you and marry her, so get out.
"Yeah, you're old news."
We're going to revamp the clinic and bring in Carolina as the groomer. I'll be the one running the clinic anyway.
"Morris, you're so cool." Carolina looks at Morris with a smitten expression. I'll say it again. These two were putting on this whole farce while they weren't wearing anything. I turned my gaze to Andreas, who was standing with his arms crossed, watching everything unfold. Andreas finally spoke, his voice calm, but filled with anger.
We're done. Disowned.
For a moment, silence fell upon the room. Breaking it was Morris.
What? Dad? What are you saying? I'm your only son. You can't just do that. So what? In terms of veterinary skills, you're nowhere near Marcia. And you think you could be the clinic director. Our parent-child relationship ends today. You're also fired from the clinic. Pack your things and leave.
As Andreas firmly stated this, Morris's lips began to quiver.
So what happens to the clinic? You're going to shut it down? What do you think? Obviously, Marcia will take over.
Andreas, thank you. As I lowered my head to Andreas, Morris and Carolina were opening and closing their mouths, at a loss for words. Then I turned to the two who were visibly flustered. By the way, thanks for leaving tons of evidence on your laptop.
You saw it?
Turns out Morris's laptop contained not just text messages, but also many photos of them in the act. I transferred several of these photos to my phone and confronted them. I also have photos taken earlier, so we have more than enough evidence. I'll be demanding $30,000 in damages from each of you.
No way. I can't pay that.
Stop messing around. Hand it over.
Just as he yelled, Morris stood up, trying to snatch my phone away. Andreas tried to intervene, but then something unbelievable happened. Sensing the tension, our dog Earl growled and leapt at Morris, defending me. The scene seared into my memory like it was in slow motion. Earl jumped towards Morris, who was lunging at me, and bit down hard, where it hurts the most. Echoing in the room were Morris's cries of agony, and his affair partner, Carolina's look of astonishment.
Call an ambulance! Call an ambulance now!
Though a small dog, the damage Earl inflicted on Morris's sensitive area was severe. With Morris looking pale as a ghost, I calmly told him, "Oops, my hand slipped because I was so shocked. Just sent those compromising photos of you and Carolina to your friends and her workplace."
What are you doing?
Never mind that. Call the ambulance.
Amid the chaos, the ambulance Carolina called arrived. Morris was taken away, clutching his privates and still in his birthday suit. Andreas and I watched, expressionless. Later on, we got Morris to sign some documents, and our divorce was finalized. Thanks to the lawyer Andreas had gotten us, we received our settlement in no time. Andreas made sure to completely sever ties with my ex-husband, kicking him out of the home and the hospital. Regarding the accidental photo I sent, well, Carolina became the talk of her office and felt so uncomfortable she ended up quitting her job. As for Morris, his friends started looking down on him, and he found himself isolated. Oh, and by the way, it seems that Morris can't make much use of that part anymore, thanks to Earl's bite. Not sure if that was the cause, but Morris and Carolina eventually broke up. Carolina moved back to her hometown. As for my ex-husband, he's working around the clock in a far-off city to pay child support for our daughter. As for me, I continue to live with Alicia in Andreas's home while working at his animal clinic. I find myself giving Earl extra treats pretty often. Recently, Andreas formally asked me to become the clinic director, and I accepted. Moving forward, I'm going to give it my all, both at work and in raising my child.
Hey, you're not the one who ordered the appraisal of my family home, are you? I asked fearfully. My husband, puzzled, replied, Yes, I did. Why? Why? Why would you try to sell my family home without my permission? Because we're a couple, right? Your family home is also my family home, isn't it? He calmly uttered these incomprehensible words, not only refusing to listen to reason, but acting as if I were the one in the wrong. In the end, he said, If you don't like it, you can leave. So I decided to divorce him and left the house. My name is Alyssa Hudson, and I am 29 years old. After graduating from college, I worked as a pharmacist at a local pharmacy. A few years ago, I met George, who is 3 years older than me and who I eventually married. He was not only kind and funny, but he also had a wonderful quality of being considerate towards me and those important to me. However, getting to this point was a rough journey. George had a gambling habit which led to several fights. He poured most of his paycheck into horse racing and slot machines, and when he ran out of money, he borrowed more. It was bearable when he was winning, but when he was losing, he was irritable all the time. I loved him, but I couldn't marry a gambling addict. As I hesitated to marry him, he looked at me with sincere eyes and promised, "I will quit gambling. I will repay all my debts. So please marry me." True to his word, he quit gambling completely and cleared his debts. I decided to marry him, but with one condition. If you gamble again, we will divorce. He agreed to this, and after 3 years of dating, we finally tied the knot. But George had a sad past. He lost his parents in an accident when he was young and was raised in an orphanage. As a result, he had very few memories of his parents. Our house is a distance that can be covered by a plane ride from my family home. After our marriage, we frequently visited my parents, and George cherished them as if they were his own. "Dear in-laws, thank you for always being kind to me. I'm glad that you treat me like your own son. It feels like I finally have parents of my own," George would say with a smile in front of my parents. Seeing his happiness warmed my heart. Several years after our marriage, one day... "What? Dad? You must be kidding." The sudden call from my mom was to inform me of my father's death. "He collapsed suddenly this morning and he's unconscious. It's too late." "No!" Worried about my crying mother over the phone, George and I immediately headed for my family home. When I arrived, I saw my father lying there, his face pale, sleeping forever. "Darling, why? Please, please wake up." My mother desperately shaking my father's shoulder, calling out to him. Seeing her like that left me at a loss for words. After the funeral, I suggested to my mother that she should live with us, but she didn't agree. "This is the house where I made memories with him, so I'll continue living here. Your sister is also here." Since my older sister had recently divorced and decided to return to the family home with her daughter, we left the care of our mother to her. A few months later, we received news from my sister that our mother had passed away. According to my sister, ever since our father passed away, our mother seemed to wither away at an alarming rate. She could barely eat and would lock herself up in her room. Even when we tried to convince her to visit the hospital, she wouldn't listen. By the time she collapsed at home, it was too late. Not only did we lose our father, but our mother too. If only we could have helped her sooner. When I think about it, I can't stop feeling regretful. Why didn't I call more often or visit more? I can't help but wonder if I was merely thinking, my sister is there so it'll be fine. But Mom wasn't fine at all. I'm not the only one mourning the loss of our parents. When my husband, George, learned of my mother's death, he broke down in tears right before my eyes. The same man who consoled me when my father died was now crying like a child. Seeing this, I realized how much he truly cared for my parents. After the funeral was over, things seemed to calm down, but my sister and I were left with various procedures to handle. The main issue was our family home. It was unthinkable to let go of the house our parents had cherished so much. After discussing it, we decided that my sister would live there with her daughter. 2 months later, I received an unexpected call from my sister. "Hello, sis?" "Oh, Alyssa, I'm sorry, it was sudden," she asked, her voice noticeably different, dark, and unlike her usual self. "What's up? It's rare for you to call," I replied. "Actually, a real estate agent just came to my place." "A realtor?" I was puzzled. "I don't really understand it either. Did you do something, Alyssa?" "Me? No, I didn't do anything," I assured her. "I see." While humming, my sister muttered, "Strange." My sister seemed to have thought that I was the one who called the realtor to our family home. "So, why did the realtor visit?" I asked, throwing the most pressing question at my sister. "They came to appraise the house," she explained. "An appraisal? Isn't that to price the house?" But my sister had no intention of selling our family home, so why? From her story, a realtor had suddenly come to our family home, claiming, "I came to appraise the house upon request." My sister didn't remember requesting such a thing and wondered if I had done it instead, which was why she contacted me. "Hold on, that's strange. There's no way we'd sell the precious family home left by our parents," I exclaimed. "That's what I thought too. We agreed to keep the family home." She agreed. "So what happened then?" I asked. I told them we didn't request an appraisal. Oh, I did ask for their contact info though. "Can you give me the realtor's contact info?" I asked my sister, got it, and immediately called them. I gave them our family home address and asked to speak to the person who did the appraisal. When I asked, they confirmed that they had indeed visited our family home that day. "Well, neither my sister nor I requested an appraisal of our family home," I told them. "Well, we have received such a request," they defended. "Can you tell me the name of the requester?" I inquired. It's Mr. George Hudson," they revealed. "Excuse me? George, this has got to be a joke. Could it be that my husband is trying to sell our family home without my permission?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing, so I asked the representative again. "You're joking, right?" "No, we really did receive a request from him." "But how could that?" "We were told that there's a house that will be put up for sale soon, so we'd like an appraisal to know its value." In the face of this unexpected situation, I somehow managed to refuse the appraisal request. I immediately headed to my husband's location. "Hey, can I talk to you for a second?" "Huh? What's up?" My husband responded, casually playing with his smartphone. "Hey, you didn't request an appraisal for my family home, did you?" I nervously asked, to which my husband responded with a puzzled look. "Yeah, I did. So?" "So? What were you thinking? Making an appraisal request without consulting me first? Even my sister was shocked." Why are you so angry? An appraisal isn't a big deal, right?" "That's not the point. Why did you do this on your own? My sister lives in our family home, and we have no intention of selling it." My voice was getting louder. My husband sighed in annoyance. "I don't know why you're so angry, but don't make a fuss over just an appraisal. We haven't sold anything yet." "That's not the issue. Why? Why would you try to sell our family home on your own?" "Well, we're married, right? I'm your husband, and your family home is also my family home, isn't it?" "What?" "I understand that we're married, but that doesn't mean he can just decide to sell our family home." Fighting back my anger, I continued to question him. "Stop it. We may be married, but it's absolutely crazy to think about selling the precious home my parents left us without even discussing it." In response to my statement, George responded with "But you know, that large house is a waste for just your sister and her 2 children to live in, don't you think?" "What? What are you talking about?" "She's a single mom, so wouldn't it be better for her to live in an apartment or something? Besides, if we sell that house and get the money, it would secure our lifestyle, right?" His words left me at a loss, standing in stunned silence. Seeing my reaction, George blurted out, "Anyway, your parents aren't here anymore, Alyssa. All you have to do is listen to me, your husband." I could no longer see the kind man I married. It seems like all he cared about was himself, his ideas, and his beliefs. But I can't possibly accept such outrageous claims. "Don't mess around. It's despicable to try and sell what my parents treasured so much." I shouted at George, to which he retorted, "Alyssa, do you value your family home more than me?" "What?" "If you value your family home so much, you don't belong here anymore. If you don't like it, you can leave this house." With loud footsteps, he returned to his own room. At that moment, an indescribable rage welled up within me. I can't believe it. I never thought he would tell me to leave. At the same time, a thought came to my mind. It was the reason why George suddenly wanted to sell our family home. Why all of a sudden? We're not in financial difficulty. But I don't need to think about it. Knowing his past, I can easily imagine. Gambling. He must need money for gambling. That's the only reason George would suddenly want to sell our family home and get a fortune. He kept saying over and over, "I'll quit." But he was gambling again, secretly, and selling our beloved family home to fund it. This time, I reached my limit. If he's going to do that, I'm going to do what I want. At the beginning of our marriage, I told him, if you gamble again, we will divorce. I packed my bags while my husband was sleeping, left the divorce papers on the table, and headed for the family home where my sister and her children live. The next day, when I woke up, I had a lot of missed calls and messages from my husband. He must have seen the divorce papers. I reluctantly answered his call again. Hello? As soon as he heard my voice, he fired off a rapid succession of questions. Hey, why aren't you home? Why are there divorce papers left here? Where are you right now? You're the one who said, if you don't like it, leave. Well, that might be true, but... George, you said, right? Alyssa should just do as I say. So I did as you said and left, right? At my remark, my husband responded in shock. I may have said to leave, but I didn't say anything about divorce. Let's talk it out first. Talk it out? Then let me hear it. Why did you think of selling our family home? That's... Answer me properly. After persistently questioning him, my suspicion turned out to be correct. Without telling me, my husband had started gambling again. And not just casino and horse racing as before. He seemed to have started investing in stocks and foreign exchange as well, borrowing money every time he made a loss and covering living expenses so I wouldn't find out. As a result, it turned out that he was nearly $100,000 in debt. What? $100,000? You're kidding, right? I'm sorry. Once I started borrowing money, I couldn't stop, and I couldn't tell you because I didn't want you to find out. But that doesn't mean you can just sell someone's family home. You're finished as a human being. No, Alyssa, that's not it. I didn't mean any harm. My husband, who had always proudly told me that he was saving for the future. I thought he had completely given up gambling and was working hard. But he was giving me borrowed money, pretending it was his salary. Of course I, who hadn't noticed until now, am also an irremediable fool. But because I loved my husband, I believed his words and had lived my married life up until now. Alyssa, please, come back. I poured out my feelings to my begging husband. I've always believed in your words, I'll quit gambling, but nothing's changed since before we got married. I can't. I've reached my limit. I don't see you as a family member anymore. Get a divorce and never show up in front of me again. Swallowing my feelings of frustration, I let out all I wanted to say and slammed the phone down. Even after, he called back several times, but I never answered. Subsequently, I contacted a lawyer and, by my strong will, the divorce was finalized. It was accepted smoothly due to the complete fault on George's side, and I was even able to claim alimony. Of course, it was impossible for him to sell my family's house. All George was left with was a debt of $100,000 from gambling. Even after the divorce was finalized, he used every possible means to ask me to get back together, like a stalker. I was the one at fault. I won't do anything selfish anymore. I'll quit gambling for real this time. I mean it. Please forgive me. Without you, Alyssa, I'll really end up all alone. It's too late for such words. My heart does not waver. Rather, it makes me feel sick to my stomach. After that, I changed my phone number and email address and blocked George's contact. I also consulted with the police and managed to get a restraining order. That ended any remaining connection with George. As of now, George is still struggling with his debt. His income alone can't keep up with the repayments, and he's caught in a negative cycle of repaying debt with more debt. If things continue like this, full repayment is completely impossible. He might end up filing for bankruptcy. It's difficult to cure a gambling addict from the root. Now I think that divorcing was the right choice. On the other hand, I've been able to live peaceful days with my sister and niece in the beloved family home my parents left behind. My marriage to George might have been a mistake, but in the end, I was able to protect this house that my father and mother left me. And I was able to regain these peaceful days with my sister and lovely niece. For the sake of my parents who raised me with such care, I won't look back at the past. I'll only look forward and live on.